Welcome to the Kingdom of Pineal's very first public state of address. The title of this presentation is Je suis Pineal, Jesus, I'm alive, c'est qui vit. Today, we will discuss the following topics: sovereignty acts, past, present, and future, admiralty laws, inheritance trusts, the Great Reset, the Kingdom of Pineal's sovereignty plan. Before we start, a quick disclaimer. Notice, all information shared in this document of presentation is the expressed opinion and perspective of the author. Use your own discernment before drawing to conclusions or making decisions. Now, what if I told you that 99% of all human beings alive on Earth today are legally declared abandoned, lost at sea, or dead? What if I told you that if you are part of the 99% and you are over the age of 7, you are legally considered as dead stock under something called admiralty law? And what if I then told you that you are entitled to an equitable birthright inheritance of all wealth on this earth? Let me explain. To fully understand why 99% of humans alive today are legally declared lost at sea or dead, we have to go back nearly 360 years to the year 1666. In 1666, something called the C'est Act 1666 was secretly passed into law behind closed doors during and shortly after the Black Plague pandemic and the London fires. This act was passed and enacted under something called international admiralty law. Admiralty law, also known as maritime or law of the seas, is a body of international law that governs nautical issues and private maritime disputes. We will get back to this a little bit later. For now, let's dissect what exactly c'est qui vit is. C'est qui vit is French for he who lives. The term is used to distinguish between a capable person and an incapable person. A capable person is classed as a sovereign living being who fully comprehends the reality of why, where, and who they are, as opposed to an incapable person who is classed as one who does not comprehend the reality and laws of why, where, and who they are. In fact, such a person is legally considered as lost at sea or a dead corporate entity, commonly known as a strawman. The C'est qui vit Act 1666 is an act that was passed into law which states, and I quote, "An estate may be effected for the benefit of one or more persons presumed lost or abandoned at sea, and therefore assumed or presumed dead after 7 years." Close quote. In other words, if a person is classed as incapable, then their property and entitlements can be taken from them for the benefit of someone who is classed as capable. When a C'est qui vit Act is enacted into motion, it is usually in the form of an insurance policy or trust agreement. The original purpose and function of a Sister Key V trust was to form a temporary holding company for the benefit of an incapable person until such a time that incapable person is capable of being trusted with their property, wealth, and entitlements. If you are watching or listening to this and you have not received or claimed your heir inheritance entitlements, then it is simply because you are by law classed as incapable. At this point, most of you are probably asking, what heir inheritance am I entitled to? Well, in essence, every human being on earth is born as an heir descendant in trust of the earth. In other words, by virtue of simply being born on earth, you and every single human being are inherently entitled to a trusted, equitable share of all the land and wealth on earth. You and every human being are, by birthright, an equal beneficiary, heir in trust of all wealth on this earth. This is legally known as descendant per stirpes rights. Per stirpes means by descendant roots or of origins. You are entitled to an equitable share of the earth by origin of your roots. And of course, the roots of every human being comes from the same original beginning. Adam and Eve, Lucy, Sophia, it doesn't matter what religion, culture, or belief system you follow, we can all agree that everything and everyone shares the same roots of origin. This makes every human on this earth a relative to each other by roots, as we are all related to the same genetic blueprint of origin. We are all one. However, for various organic or inorganic reasons, this relative relation we all share has been so far removed over time, we have now forgotten our relationships. One of the reasons that aided this removal of relation is something called the Restoration Movement of 1660, which paved the way for the reinstatement of King Charles II, who then took relative common wealth away from the people and directly into the hands of the church and state. He also went on to amend the Sestakivy Act in the year 1666 into what it is today, a trust agreement or human life insurance policy insured against your earthly heir inheritance entitlements, thereby benefiting someone else because you are considered incapable, lost at sea, or dead. So, you might be asking, when and how exactly did this Sestakivy concept of governance come about? To fully grasp this question, we must revisit the very beginning of this Sestakivy concept. The history of Sestakivy. The first historical act outlining Sestakivy trusts is deliberately hidden under the claimed statutes of the reign of King Richard III of England in 1483. The English Act, still in force to this day, states that all conveyances and transfers and use of property is good, even though a purchaser may be unaware that it is effectively the cestui property of someone else. This act allowed for the cestui or life inheritance of one person to be sold to another person without the consent of the original beneficiary, effectively putting that cestui inheritance into bondage. To add further injury, the Act gives a vague and challenging path of relief from this injustice, simply stating that, and I quote, "For one to be free of cestui bondage, they must demonstrate that they are of complete mind, not an infant, and not under financial duress, at which point any property under cestui trust is rightfully theirs for use." In other words, you can only reclaim your inheritance if you know how to. The second act outlining cestui trusts is deliberately hidden under the reign of King Henry VII in 1488. Under this act, lords were permitted to discourage any people classed as wards or poor slaves from demonstrating their freedom. Such lords were encouraged to use writs and other devices to force such people back into being compliant wards or poor slaves. The only remedy under this act was if a ward, poor slave, demonstrated that he was less of a ward than his lord. In other words, under this law, wealth belonging to an incapable person must be given to a capable person, and the incapable person whose wealth has been taken from them can only reclaim their wealth if they can prove that they are more capable than the person who initially took their wealth. The third act, outlining the operation of cestui, only hidden this time as something called estate per autre vie, was in 1741, whereby one who was knowledgeable of the cestui slavery system could, between the ages of 18 to 20, seek to recover such property under cestui and cease to be a slave. However, the same act also made it law that remedy of such slavery would only be available for 20 years, from the years 1741 to the year 1761. Now, the first open form of an official cestui act was formed through an act of Henry VIII of England in 1535, whereby the poor people of England had all their homes, goods, and wealth seized and handed over to small religious estates to keep in their trusts. These small religious estates were granted the welfare or commonwealth benefit of all the people of England. This was the first official form of a state benefit trust or cestui use. However, the first cestui trusts were formally enacted in the year 1540, again passed by Henry VIII. Unfortunately and conveniently, this particular act was and still is repealed, meaning it is formally and officially withdrawn from public knowledge. This is very interesting because it is the only cestui trust act that has avauri, meaning an official remedy or solution of protocol for addressing injury or injustice by way of cestui v bondage. In other words, the only way to know exactly how to claim compensation for loss of inheritance through a cestui v trust bondage is contained within this act, which is not openly available to the public to this day. At this point, if you are not from England and you are probably thinking, even if these acts are still in use today, surely they don't apply to me as I am not from England. And that would be the case had it not been for the cestui v Act of 1666. So what exactly is the cestui v Act of 1666? The cestui v Act 1666 is an act of governance that was passed by the Parliament of Charles II, and it is also called the Proof of Life Act. As we have already established, this act stated that if a person is classed as incapable of looking after their own property, wealth and entitlements, then any such benefits can be taken from them for the benefit of someone else who is classed as capable. Clearly, the vagueness of this act was and still is very controversial. Firstly, who decides on the remit of capability or incapability of a person or persons? Secondly, if one is considered incapable, why are they not given the fair opportunity to express their capabilities by openly being given all the necessary and relevant information and data? And thirdly, the vagueness of this act allows opportunity for capable persons to easily and unfairly take advantage of persons classed as incapable. This is why this cestui v Act of 1666 was passed behind closed doors during and shortly after the Black Plague death pandemic and the London fires of 1666. The distractions of the pandemic and the fires allowed Charles II and his Parliament to secretly pass this act into law without much opposition. Sounds familiar? This act allowed for the creation of cestui v trusts. A cestui v trust, also known as a Fide-commissary trust or foreign situs trust, is a form of secret trust agreement, also known as a fictional concept of temporary trust, that was created and passed into law almost exactly 360 years ago and is still in use to this day by every nation on earth. It is a human trust insurance policy set up to insure the living human being against their earthly heir inheritance. Unfortunately, for 99% of humanity today, this insurance policy was created against our will, and furthermore, the details of it were hidden from us because someone else deemed us incapable. Now, the reason why this act created in England affects every single person on earth is because this act was passed under something called international admiralty law, meaning its implications went beyond English national laws and into international law, overseas to all internationally recognized nations. Now, before we get into the ramifications of this 1666 Act, we must first comprehend the foundational basis of admiralty law. Why and what exactly is Admiralty law or maritime law of the sea? This international law of the seas is based on the fundamental principle that all our material reality is mostly made up of water. Both the earth and our human bodies contain an average of about 70% water. This means most of our reality is in or on water. With this in mind, we could say the land masses of the earth and the masses of our human bodies are floating in waters just like ships. A ship is a vessel that holds, carries, and moves goods on or within bodies of water. By this definition, every island, territory, and country on every continent can be classed as an earth ship, and every living human being can also be classed as a living ship. And this is why the English language uses the word ship as a suffix for so many words. For instance, friendships, relationships, kingship, ladyship, leadership, fellowship, worship, township, etc., etc. This is further amplified when we consider that a child is born or birthed through the mother's birth canal, from the mother's amniotic waters, and received by the dock on arrival. Once the child has docked on the earth, he or she is given a certificate of live birth and citizenship. As the child sails through life, he or she builds relationships and friendships with other fellow ships. And of course, we all know ships move by the current of the seas, just as the human ship is birthed into this world by the currency of inheritance. By this remit, I'm sure you can now comprehend where international admiralty law is derived from, as it encompasses both physical and spiritual universal principles. And so, of course, this is why the Cestui v. 1666 Act was passed under admiralty law and hence affects every single human being on this earth to this day. However, it is important to note that the Cestui v. Act 1666 is not a law but an act within a law. Acts can be changed as they are man-made, as opposed to the actual body of admiralty law that cannot be changed, as it is based on decrees of natural and universal principles. It is also worth noting that since admiralty law is based on international commerce, it would make sense why the Cestui v. Act 1666 was passed in the City of London. The City of London is classed as an independent corporate state and the administrative commercial capital of the world, just like the state of the Vatican is classed as the administrative spiritual capital of the world, and the state of Washington, D.C. is classed as the administrative military capital of the world. This means that when this act was passed into law, the City of London, as the commercial capital of the world, assumed custody of everybody's wealth and placed it into their own corporate state trust. It's also interesting to note that the word corporate is in relation to the word corpse. A corporation is an operation that holds corpses, or dead entities. In essence, this London Corporate State Trust, under the guise of the Cestui Act 1666, assumed everyone on earth was incapable and thus became the trustee, husband holding of all titles of the people, their property and wealth, until a capable living man or woman comes back to reclaim those titles. This is still the case to this day. Right now, most likely you and 99% of humans on earth are declared incapable, lost at sea, or a legally dead corporate entity. And since you are considered incapable, lost, or dead, your inheritance benefits are considered abandoned, which allows corporations like the City of London to hold your inheritance in their trust whilst you are absent, or at least until you show up, declare and prove yourself alive. This is why you always need representation when involved in legal matters, because a dead corporate entity cannot represent itself. It is also why barristers and judges in courts wear black robes and other paraphernalia to honor the dead corporate entity being represented. A living being should only present themselves. They should never be represented. And of course, we can see how a court is a place where games are played. Courtrooms are full of characters playing out acts. Usually, court representation is offered in the character form of a lawyer. All lawyers must pass and complete something called the Temple Bar, which is a ritual rite of passage, an oath of allegiance to the corporate commercial system of law. When a lawyer represents you, the dead entity, they are only doing so in the capacity of the oath of allegiance they swore through their Temple Bar initiation. You will also notice that when you are summoned to court, your name is written in all capital letters. According to Admiralty law, a corporation or corpse can only be legally and officially identified when written in all capital letters. Hence why all names on graveyard tombstones are always written in all capital letters. Okay, I hope you are still with me. I know there's been a lot to digest, but stick with me. Now, I'm going to explain the process of how your wealth, inheritance, life insurance was taken from you and where it is right now. The history of Cestui trusts. Before the Cestui Responsible Act of 1666 was passed, all babies born were assumed alive unless otherwise stated. However, since the Cestui 1666 Act, the assumption of a birthed living being is not acknowledged until that said living being can declare itself alive. In other words, since 1660 to 66, when a baby is born, the law assumes the baby is abandoned, and as that baby is incapable of claiming his or her heir inheritance entitlements, a capable person or persons assumes responsibility of that baby's rights until such a time that child can declare him or herself alive, and capable. To put this into context, here is a real-life example relevant to all of us. When a baby is born, his or her birth is officiated by a document called a certificate of live birth. This document acts as proof that a living being with a spirit and body was birthed into earth. And as we have already stated, every living human being is born entitled to an equal share of all wealth on this earth. Effectively, the certificate of live birth acts as an open check or bond to allow the living being to claim their heir inheritance entitlements. It is also important to note that a certificate of live birth is not the same as a birth certificate, but we'll get to that later. Now, under the remit of the Sestakivi Act 16666, that said a child is legally presumed to be abandoned or lost for 7 years, the bond certificate of live birth is considered redundant or incapacitated. Because of this assumption, that child's bond certificate of live birth is put into bondage under something called Sestakivi Trust Insurance Policy, which is created on behalf of that assumed abandoned or lost child. This child Sestakivi Trust is established as a legal fiction company of 3 associates: a grantor, who is the creator of the insurance trust; a trustee, who is the one who manages the trust; and a beneficiary, who is the one who receives the benefits of the trust. In this particular instance, the grantor or creator of the inheritance trust is the corporate city of London. They draw up the commercial human insurance policy as they are the assumed commercial administrative capital of the world. The trustee of the living inheritance insurance policy or trust is usually the state, government, crown, or corporation that administrates or governs the nation or country the child was birthed in. And of course, the beneficiary of the inheritance living trust should be the child or person in question. However, because the baby, child, or person is incapable of legally declaring themselves alive as per the Sestakivi Act 1666 under Admiralty law, they are assumed to be abandoned or lost at sea. At this point, the trustee of the living inheritance trust insures the bond certificate of life as an IOU birth certificate. This IOU birth certificate is essentially a receipt of the original bond certificate of live birth. The birth certificate receipt acts as a legal fiction company to represent the child that is assumed to be abandoned or lost at sea. At this point, there are now 2 documents in question: an inheritance bond certificate, which represents the living child, and a birth certificate IOU receipt of the bond, which represents the absence of the living child or being. Since the inheritance bond certificate represents the living or spirit of a living being, it is sent to the chosen spiritual administrative capital of the world, the Vatican. The Vatican holds the living bond certificate on behalf of the presumed abandoned or lost child for a minimum 7 years, or until that said child comes forward and proclaims his or herself alive. This is called a dispensation period. If that said child does not come forward to proclaim his or herself alive after 7 years, the Vatican then sends the living bond certificate back to the trustee. At this point, the trustee is now legally allowed to presume that the child or being is permanently abandoned, lost, or even dead, effectively classing them as a John Doe or Jane Doe, or simply put, a corporate dead entity being. This then means that all of that child's inheritance benefits are forfeited into the custody of the trustee until that said child can declare his or herself alive. Essentially, the inheritance bond is placed into bondage of commerce under Admiralty law. This human bond certificate is then sold or sailed as dead stock to corporations, whom then float and trade that stock in bondage as currency on the public stock exchange. At this point, all the administrative parties pay themselves for their rendered services. The grantor, in this case the City of London, is paid for the services of creating the trust insurance policy. The trustee, in this case the Crown, State or Government, is paid for the services of managing the person's trust. And of course, the Vatican is paid for their services of holding the certificate in dispensation in bondage for the first 7 years of the child's or being's life. Unfortunately, the person who is the actual beneficiary is the only one who does not directly benefit from any of these transactions, simply because they don't actually know about it. Hence, they are lost at sea. However, a beneficiary can or may sometimes indirectly benefit a little from their inheritance by way of state benefits and services that may be provided by the trustee governing body of citizenship that child belongs to. And finally, after 70 years, the inheritance bond floating in commercial bondage as corporate stock must be retired from the stock market, as this is the traditional life expectancy of an estate in heir. At this point, the human life insurance must be settled. The trustee, in this case the government, receives a final payment, usually by way of inheritance tax, and a small retirement package is offered to the original beneficiary, if they are still alive, that is. Now, where does this leave us today, I hear you ask? What's the current situation? Well, we all know that these bondage acts and laws were initiated almost exactly 360 years ago, if we count from 1660/66 to the years 2020/26. We also know that a full circle or revolution is 360 degrees. In essence, these bondage acts have completed a full circle of 360 years. When a full revolution happens, a reset must be instigated. Between 2020 and 2026, a full revolution of the Maritime Cestui Acts will be completed. And this is, of course, why 2020 was the beginning of the Great Reset. This reset will, of course, be in motion between 2020 and 2026, after which a new system will then begin to run a new course for the next cycle or circle of human governance. Right now, as I speak and as you listen to this, new acts for your trust are being established by those whom deem themselves capable of doing so. You may be familiar with acts like the Coronavirus Act 2020, the COVID-19 Testing, Reaching and Contacting Everyone Act or TRACE Act, also known as the House Resolution 6666 Bill. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and the Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Security Act, also known as Trump's CARES Act. But more significantly, there is one particular act that really signifies all of the above acts. I implore you all to research this. It's called the Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator Act, also known as the ACT Accelerator. Now, these acts are nothing more than new and modern human trust insurance policies with the aim of executing the same objectives as the Sesta-QV Act of 1666. I won't go into the details of these acts. Suffice to say that history is repeating itself. 360 years ago, during a world pandemic, acts like the Sesta-QV Act 1666 were passed into law, allowing a small handful of elites who deemed themselves capable to legally take and control the wealth, property, and entitlements of 99% of the people on earth whom they deemed as incapable. The decisions we make individually and collectively over the next 13 years from 2020 to 2023 will shape the future of human governance in this realm over the next 360 years. My prediction is that these acts or trusts of care will continue to be implemented and enforced from 2020 to 2026, after which there will be a 7-year dispensation from 2026 to 2023. After 2023, the Great Reset will be complete and a new world order will emerge. This current period, from now until 2026, is crucial. It is an opportunity for the capable, or for those of us who are capable, to distinguish ourselves from those who are incapable. Most will, and some already are, putting their trust in government and corporate trusts, or care. Some are setting up individual private trusts, and others, like the Kingdom of Pineal, are creating new community trusts. It is vital at this time that you decide who you are going to bank your trust with. Governments, corporations, yourself, or communities. Choose wisely. This decision, without a doubt, is the biggest decision you will have to make in your current lifetime. Now, let's recap and summarize where we're at. As we've already established, a trust organization is a structure created with the purpose of establishing and organizing the affairs of a person or organization of people. We have also established that you and every human being on this earth has a birthright entitlement to an equal share of all natural wealth on this earth. Over the last 360 years, the inheritance entitlements of 99% of people has been in the trust or care of 1% of people whom have deemed themselves capable generation after generation. Right now, we are collectively going through a reset that will allow you and I to also deem ourselves capable of claiming and managing our birthright heir entitlements. We have the opportunity to declare and prove that we are capable and therefore trustworthy of being trustees of our own trust foundations. We can declare and prove our capability, firstly, by proclaiming our sovereign nature, thereby collapsing our fictional corporate identities and creating new, living, Sestiki V sovereign trusts. When the current stock market crashes, which will be soon, I'm sure, all our inheritance life birth certificate bonds will be out of bondage, meaning those who are capable will be able to claim their inheritance without let or hindrance. Unfortunately, most on earth are still incapable due to a lack of knowledge. Therefore, when the new world order of governance establishes, their inheritance will be reclaimed by those who are capable. And once again, history will repeat itself. This time, the bondage will not be in physical admiralty currency or currency, but rather in ethereal or air current of the seas or currency. This new bondage will be less obvious and more cryptic in its nature of currency. Artificial intelligence will cryptically replace natural intelligence, effectively making it more difficult for a person in crypto bondage to free themselves. Essentially, the current capable establishment of elites are fighting or working amongst themselves for the bondage of souls through their various enforced acts and care acts. They are creating new trust policies to further consolidate power for the 1% to continue to manage the 99%. They have no intention of changing the course of history. Their intention is to keep the same system of governance going, just with different scripts and props, but the overall agenda is exactly the same. We, at the Kingdom of Pineal, are one of a small handful of capable peoples who want to break the mold and rewrite history. The Kingdom of Pineal Trust Organization. We, as a collective of capable sovereign living beings, have come together to create a new collective trust organization based on original, natural, organic human principles of honor, abundance, respect for one another, and the earth entrusted upon us. We are exercising our human inheritance birthrights to sovereign abundance. And this is how. The Pineal Sovereign Plan. As already stated, We have established a trust organization, and as with all trust organization, there must be three key parties involved: a grantor or creator who sets up the trust and populates it with their terms and conditions and assets. In this case, the Kingdom of Pineal. 2. A trustee or fiduciary responsible for managing the affairs in the trust. A fiduciary or trustee can also be defined as board members, a council of advisors, a governing body, or administrative body. In this case, a Paraíso Immensurável association. And finally, a beneficiary, whom is or are the persons who will receive the trust organization's benefits, and in this particular instance, the pioneers and pineal custodians. With this in mind, the Kingdom of Pineal is a trust organization created with the purpose of establishing and organizing the affairs of all Kingdom of Pineal custodians and pioneers. We are acting as the principal agents to help our fellow custodians proclaim and reclaim their rights to their inheritance, privileges, and wealth. Unlike most other trust organizations, the Kingdom of Pineal will only accept and constitute capable and sovereign living beings as per our constitution of our manifesto of philosophy and spiritual beliefs. The Kingdom of Pineal's trust organization was created for the benefit of all custodian pioneers. This includes all reserved rights and assets from and within the Pineal Trust policies, namely the custodians of the Pineal Trust organization, whom are the policy holders and beneficiaries of all pineal wealth, assets, and privileges insured under and within the Kingdom of Pineal's jurisdictions. The Kingdom of Pineal does not have a single trustee. All members of the Pineal organization are considered trustees and beneficiaries as stipulated within our constitution. Having said that, the collective administration or organization is currently administered from our temple embassy in Portugal under the stewardship of the Pinheiro family, whom currently reside there. Paraíso Immensurável Association is the trustee administrative body that governs and acts in the sole interest of the Kingdom of Pineal and its custodian beneficiaries. Paraíso Immensurável Association is officially registered as an environmental, ecological, and spiritual trust association within the country of Portugal. Membership. So, how does a Pineal membership work? Through our passport membership, we will essentially be acting as principal agents on behalf of our custodian beneficiaries. If or when we claim inheritance entitlements and or compensation on behalf of our custodian beneficiaries, we will be honorable and transparent with all our intentions, activities, and actions in accordance with the Pineal tenets and laws. If such heir inheritance entitlements are received in the form of currency, we will inform all our custodian beneficiaries individually of what they are entitled to. At this point, there will be two choices our beneficiaries can take. The first option will involve the beneficiary opting to redeem their entitlements or currency outright, at which point Paraíso Imensurable Association would need to be paid a compulsory tithe of 10% for the administrative services rendered. This option would also mean that the custodian would lose any present and future Kingdom of Pineal state benefits, including citizenship. The second option will involve the beneficiary opting to bank their proceeds into the pineal establishment and development of the Kingdom of Pineal as a collective society. At this point, the beneficiary would receive an initial down payment payout of 25% of their inheritance benefits. 10% would be donated to Paraíso Imensurable Association for administrative services rendered, and the remaining 65% would be invested into the Kingdom of Pineal's trust as an equitable living insurance for the benefit of all Kingdom of Pineal custodians. The proceeds invested into the trust organization of the Kingdom of Pineal will be used to manifest the future vision of the Kingdom of Pineal's manifesto. This includes, but is not limited to, public infrastructure, housing, agriculture, food and textile production, transportation, education, technology, health, and well-being services. Conclusion. In conclusion, our ultimate aim as an organization is to prove that we are alive and capable, create a new society of community, founded and cultured on principles of honor, abundance, respect, and trust in one another for the greater good of the earth. If this pineal vision, mission, and movement towards true sovereignty in trust of one another is in alignment with your vision, visit our website and join the Pineal Mission, www.thekingdomofpineal.org. On our website, you will find more information about our vision, mission, philosophy, and manifesto for the future. You will also be able to apply for a Pineal Custodian passport, as well as keep up to date with our progress and development as a collective community. We hope you benefited from this knowledge and information we are sharing with you. All we ask is that you use your own discernment before drawing conclusions or making decisions. Be great, be sovereign, be kind, be cause, and always remember, fortune favors the brave and capable. Great fortune comes with great responsibility. In a chi. Ciao for now.
But mente sã, corpo são, liberdade, família.
Família, Pinheiro, eu amo-vos.
Kingdom apart, how to keep spirits high
And live the life you want to.
Kingdom apart, how to keep spirits high
And live the life you want to.
In the kingdom of light, how to keep spirits high.
And live the life you want to. And live the life you want to.
In the
Kingdom apart, how to keep spirits high
And live the life you want to. Paraíso imensurável. And live the life you want to. Paraíso imensurável.